You see, in this world full of noise, full of people shouting their half-truths and borrowed wisdom, there's a rare kind of power in silence, a rare kind of magic in minding your own business. Everyone's in a race to be seen, to be heard, to prove something. But you don't need to run that race. You don't need to announce your every move like a town crier on market day. Focus on yourself. That's where the real revolution happens, that quiet war within, between who you are and who you're meant to become. While others are talking, boasting, posting, you're working. You're building in silence, strengthening your roots so deep that no storm can shake you. Growth doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the shadows, when no one's clapping. Stay silent not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Silence is your shield, it's your statement. It says, I don't owe you my thoughts, my process, or my path. Let your results speak. Let your peace be loud. Let your progress do the talking, because the loudest one in the room is often the most uncertain. Focus is the most expensive thing in this world. Guard it like treasure. Don't let distractions bargain it away. Don't chase validation. Don't explain yourself. The real ones don't shout, they show up, they glow up, and they grow up in silence. Most people don't get that. They think if you're quiet, you must have nothing to say, that if you're not constantly voicing opinions or asserting yourself, you're somehow lacking. But that's just surface level thinking, the kind that skims the top of life and never dives deep. Real power, the kind that lasts, doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't parade itself or crave the spotlight. It sits back, watches, listens, absorbs, and moves only when it must. Silence is misunderstood because we live in a world addicted to noise. Everywhere you go, people are shouting for attention, desperate to be noticed, validated, applauded. But strength isn't about putting yourself on display. It's about restraint. It's about knowing you could speak, you could fight, you could shout, but choosing not to, because your peace means more than being heard by people who don't understand your journey anyway. There's power in stillness. There's command in being able to hold your tongue when provoked, to walk away when others beg for a reaction, to hold your vision quietly while others try to throw you off course with their chaos. Silence is control. It's having your emotions mastered, your energy preserved, and your dignity untouched. The ones who speak less often see more. They read the room. They catch the shifts. They understand people not by what's said, but by what's left unsaid. A person who is silent isn't hiding. They're watching. They're thinking 10 steps ahead. They're not trying to win the moment. They're trying to win the war. When you realize you don't have to prove anything to anyone, when you stop trying to be understood by the unworthy, that's when silence becomes your power, not because you can't speak, but because you've chosen a higher form of strength. Quiet strength, enduring strength, the kind of strength that doesn't crumble when things get hard, it sharpens. And in that silence, there's clarity. While others are tangled in their own noise, you're tuned into your own frequency. You're rooted, grounded. A storm may be raging around you, but inside, calm, unshaken. Because silence, my friend, that's not weakness. That's strategy. That's discipline. That's power wrapped in humility. See, the spotlight is seductive. It flatters you. It makes you feel seen, important, like you've arrived. But real growth, the kind that changes your bones, not just your image, that doesn't happen under bright lights. It happens when no one's watching. It happens in the quiet corners of your life, when you're sitting alone with your thoughts, wrestling your demons, fighting your own laziness, your own doubt, your own reflection. People romanticize success, but they don't want to talk about the hours of silence that come before it. They don't want to talk about the mornings you wake up before the sun, not to be admired, but to put in work no one will clap for. They don't want to talk about the nights you question everything, staring at the ceiling, wondering if you're even on the right path. But that's where it happens. That's the workshop of the soul, the shadows, the solitude. You can't grow when you're busy performing. When you're too focused on who's watching, you lose the plot. You start living for applause instead of purpose, and applause fades, but purpose holds. When you step back from the noise and get serious about your journey, not the image of it, not the performance of it, that's when you start transforming, slowly, painfully. Solitude forces you to meet yourself. No masks, no filters, just you, with all your flaws, your fears, your buried potential. And that's uncomfortable, but that discomfort, that's the grind. That's the sharpening stone. You either run from it, or you lean in and let it teach you. You strip down your ego, your excuses, your fantasies, and you start rebuilding from the inside out. That's growth. And the reason it doesn't happen in the spotlight is simple. The spotlight demands a version of you, a brand, a role. But growth demands the real you, the raw, unpolished, unpresentable version, the version that fails, that cries, that breaks. That's the version that learns. That's the version that levels up. So while the world chases fame, be okay chasing peace. While others post every move, be fine keeping yours private. Let the crowd be obsessed with the show, you stay obsessed with the work. Because what blooms in solitude is sacred, what grows in silence is unshakable. And when you finally do step into the light, if you even care to, you won't need to prove a damn thing. That's the line right there. Heavy, uncomfortable, but freeing if you really let it sink in. You walk this earth with your own 2 feet, not theirs. You carry your own burdens, not theirs. You live with your choices, your pain, your growth, not theirs. So why, tell me, do we so often feel the need to explain ourselves to people who don't walk beside us when it's dark? Who weren't there for the failures, the doubts, the lonely nights? Why do we hand over our decisions to the judgment of those who only see fragments of the story? See, people love to have opinions about your journey, where you're going, how fast you're moving, whether your choices make sense to them. But the truth is, they don't get to approve the steps you take. They don't get to sit on a jury for a life they don't live. You don't need to justify why you cut someone off, why you walked away from that job, why you took a risk, why you slowed down or sped up or switched directions entirely. That's your sacred ground, yours alone. Most of the time, they wouldn't even understand if you did explain. Because people don't listen to understand, they listen to respond, to judge, to compare. And the moment you start living for other people's understanding, you stop living for your own truth. You shrink your decisions down to bite-sized pieces for people who can't digest the full weight of your vision. You don't owe them that. You don't owe them your reasoning, your blueprint, your behind-the-scenes footage. Let them wonder, let them assume, let them misunderstand. Because the ones who really get it, they won't need an explanation. They'll just know. They'll recognize the energy of someone choosing themselves, carving their path through confusion and chaos without needing applause or permission. Life isn't a group project. Your healing, your transformation, your ambition, it's not a conference call where everyone gets to vote. You've got to stop sending progress reports to people who aren't even qualified to grade your journey. Let them think what they want. Let them talk. Let them guess wrong. You just keep building, keep moving, keep choosing what feels right for you, not what looks right to them. Because when it's all said and done, the only one who has to live with your choices is you, not the audience, not the critics, not the bystanders on the sidelines, just you. And that truth alone, that's the permission slip to stop explaining and start living. Focus, real, razor-sharp, undiluted focus, is one of the rarest things in this modern world. It's not just about concentrating, it's about building a fortress around your attention. Because everything out there is designed to scatter you. Every ping, every scroll, every voice calling your name, every opinion thrown your way, it all chips away at your clarity, pulling you from your path, bit by bit, until you're not even sure what direction you're heading anymore. The thing is, people talk about focus like it's some passive thing, like you either have it or you don't. But the truth? Focus is something you fight for every day. It's a discipline, not a gift. It's choosing, moment by moment, what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It's about being ruthless with your time, brutal with your boundaries. Because the more valuable your vision becomes, the more distractions come dressed like opportunities, like friendships, like love, like good things. And if you're not paying attention, you'll hand over your focus to things that look right but feel wrong. Distractions don't always come loud and obvious. Sometimes they sneak in quietly, as small talk, shallow praise, or someone else's drama dressed as urgency. Sometimes it's comparison, scrolling through someone else's curated highlight reel and questioning your own pace. Sometimes it's your own mind, whispering fears, planting seeds of doubt, making you question the very thing you were so sure of yesterday. Protecting your focus means learning to say no, not just to others, but to the version of yourself that wants to be liked, wants to be everywhere, wants to respond to everything. And let's be honest, it's hard. It's hard to lock in when the world rewards distraction, when it's more popular to be busy than to be intentional, when silence is seen as weakness and solitude as loneliness. But that's the test. That's where the separation happens, between the ones who dabble and the ones who dedicate. Because those who truly move mountains, they're not always the most talented. They're the ones who protected their focus like it was sacred, like it was oxygen. So you build walls where you need to. You unplug. You disappear if that's what it takes. You get comfortable being unreachable. Not because you're rude, not because you're cold, but because you finally understand the value of your attention. You realize that every time you let yourself get pulled into someone else's chaos, you drift a little further from your own peace, your own purpose. Focus is expensive. It costs time. It costs comfort. It costs relationships that once felt familiar. But if your vision is real, if your path is yours and yours alone, then that cost, it's always worth it. Because nothing worth building was ever built while answering every text, explaining every move, or keeping everyone else happy. You want focus? Then protect it like your life depends on it. Because, in a way, it does. Intentions are easy. They sound good, they feel good, they dress us up in the illusion of progress. Everyone has them. Plans, dreams, promises, declarations of what they're going to do. You've heard it all before. I'm going to start that business. I'm about to cut all the toxic people off. This year's my year. All these grand speeches wrapped in future tense, and yet just nothing ever changes. Because intentions without action are just noise. Poetic, well-meaning noise, but noise all the same. See, the world doesn't move for what you say you're going to do. It moves for what you actually do, what you show up for, what you finish, what you sacrifice for in silence, without clapping hands, without someone watching over your shoulder. That's the difference. People get addicted to talking about their goals instead of doing the gritty, unglamorous work it takes to bring them to life. They fall in love with the idea of becoming something, but hate the discipline it takes to get there. But results, they don't lie. They don't need an introduction. You don't have to convince anyone of what you're about when your results are loud enough. You walk into a room and the energy shifts. Not because you spoke, but because you built, because you delivered, because your consistency became your resume. That's the kind of presence that can't be faked. Let's be real. People don't respect intentions. Not for long. They might clap at first, they might cheer you on, but after a while, if you keep saying the same thing and producing nothing, that applause dies out. Even you start losing respect for yourself. Because deep down we know whether we're showing up or just performing the part. And there's a quiet kind of pain in knowing you had the potential, but chose comfort, chose the talk over the task. You don't have to tell people what you're working on. You don't have to announce every move. Let the results roll in and speak for you. Let the work echo louder than the words. Because when you've put in the time, when you've sharpened your craft in the dark, when you've sacrificed sleep, ego, and comfort to stay the course, the results will walk in first. You won't even have to open your mouth. People will know. So don't chase the image of progress, chase the weight of results, chase the evidence. Because at the end of the day, intentions are invisible until they're backed by action. And if your actions aren't speaking, maybe it's time to stop talking and get to work. Let's not sugarcoat this. We all want to be seen. We all want to be acknowledged, appreciated, clapped for. It's human. But the danger begins when that craving becomes the fuel. When every move you make, every word you speak, every dream you chase starts bending to the question, will they approve of this? That's the trap. That's the slow death of authenticity, trading in your truth for applause that barely lasts longer than a blink. Validation feels good, no doubt. It's a hit of dopamine, a pat on the back, a temporary high. Someone says you're doing great and you walk a little taller. But the problem is, if you start depending on that, you're building your worth on shaky ground. Because what happens when the likes stop? When the compliments go quiet? When no one's clapping, no one's watching, no one's there to affirm your path? If you've built yourself around the echo of other people's approval, then the silence will shake you to your core. Self-respect, though, that's a whole different game. That's internal, that's rooted, that's looking yourself in the mirror, not for perfection, not for applause, but for alignment. It's asking, did I stay true to me? Did I hold the line when it would have been easier to fold? Did I act out of integrity even when no one saw it? That kind of respect can't be bought, can't be borrowed, and sure as hell can't be taken away by someone else's opinion. It's earned in private, through choices no one applauds, but you feel deep in your soul. And here's the raw truth. People are fickle. They love you one day, forget you the next. They'll hype you up when it suits them, then ghost you when your growth makes them uncomfortable. If you live for their cheers, you'll die by their silence. But when you've got self-respect, you can walk away from anything that doesn't serve you. Jobs, friendships, relationships, habits. Not because someone told you to, but because you know your value, you know your standard. It's not about arrogance. It's about knowing your worth without needing someone else to confirm it. It's the quiet confidence of doing what's right over what's popular, of staying committed to your vision even when people don't get it, because you know in your gut, in your bones, that your journey isn't up for public vote. You weren't put here to be liked. You were put here to become. And that process, it requires a backbone, not a fan base. So let them talk, let them misunderstand, let them scroll past. You just keep building that self-respect like it's the foundation of everything you are, because it is. Validation fades, trends shift, crowds move on, but that quiet, unshakable pride in how you carried yourself through it all, that lasts, that stays. That's the real prize. It's a strange irony of life. The ones who shout the most often have the least to say. They puff their chests, speak over others, dominate every room like volume equals value. But if you pause, if you really listen, you'll notice something hollow beneath all that noise. Because real confidence, real knowing, doesn't need to broadcast itself. It doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't cling to the need to be heard in every conversation, praised in every room, or seen in every moment. No, that kind of loudness is rarely about strength. It's a cover, a mask, a performance trying to distract from what's missing underneath. Insecurity wears many disguises, and loudness is one of its favorites. It hides behind bravado, behind the constant need to correct, to interrupt, to dominate. It's the over-explainer, the show-off, the one who can't sit in silence because silence would mean sitting with themselves, and that's too uncomfortable. So they fill every gap with noise, hoping that if they speak fast enough, often enough, loud enough, no one will notice the fear trembling underneath. But the wise ones, they move differently. They're measured. They don't talk just to fill air. They speak when it matters, and when they do, you feel it, because their words come from depth, not desperation. They don't need to prove anything. They've already proven it to themselves. That's why they can hold silence like a weapon, why their presence can feel louder than someone else's shouting. And it's not just about individuals, it's the culture too. We've built a world that rewards the performance. The loudest opinions go viral, the most dramatic voice wins the argument. But does that make them right? Does that make them wise? Of course not. In fact, wisdom often speaks softly, or not at all. It waits, it watches, it knows the power of timing, the discipline of restraint, and in that silence, it holds a depth that noise can never reach. So don't be fooled by the loud. Don't assume volume equals confidence or presence. Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet barely speak. Not because they're unsure, but because they're secure. Secure enough to observe. Secure enough to build quietly. Secure enough to not chase validation through noise. And maybe that's the challenge for all of us, to resist the urge to shout just to feel seen, to stop measuring our worth by how many people are listening and instead measure it by the truth in what we're saying. Because at the end of the day, it's not the loudest lasts, it's the real. And real doesn't need to scream. So in the end, stay silent, stay steady, and stay rooted in your own lane. Let the world spin loud while you move quiet. Let others chase attention while you chase purpose. Because the loud ones will come and go, flashing like lightning, but gone just as fast. But you're building something that lasts. You're not here for the crowd. You're here for the craft. Focus on yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of sacred duty. Your peace, your growth, your path. It's too precious to hand over to noise. Let your silence be your rebellion. Let your discipline be your volume. And let your results do all the talking. Because the ones who master the art of being unseen while building an unstoppable force, those are the ones the world remembers when the noise dies down.